Good morning, Bitcoins, and welcome to Mad Bitcoins Live. We're joined today by Tone Vays, formerly with Coin Telegraph, and we're going to attempt to answer who owns and runs Coin Telegraph? Where do they get their funding from? As you all know, we've been talking about Coin Telegraph quite a lot lately. There was first a major article in Reddit that said that Coin Telegraph was shutting down, cutting all non-writer salary to zero. This article then led to ZapChain asking the question, who owns and runs Coin Telegraph? And then I was joined by Ian DiMartino, who believes it has something to do with Bytecoin. We were also joined a couple days later by Evander Smart, who said the new Coin Telegraph is fine, the writers are getting paid what they're said, and that he sees no problem with it. And now, today, we're joined by Tone Vays. How's it going, Tone?
Hey Thomas, doing good. A little late here in New York, but I'm glad to talk to you, man. I finally got to be on your show.
Well, it took major controversy to bring you here, but you're here now. So, Tone, when did you work for Cointelegraph? When did you start off with the organization?
So I started sometime in July of last year. I met a couple of Cointelegraph guys at the first conference I ever spoke at, which was, I think, in May over in Hong Kong. And I was out there, met a few Cointelegraph people. Maria Jones was one of them. We had a good chat. They heard me speak at the conference. I get home back to New York. Next thing I know, the editor-in-chief is giving me a call. It's like, hey, can we talk? We want you to write for us. I thought it was great. I was just starting out in the Bitcoin space. My first question I asked him, why do you want me to write for you? I'm like, I'm not that much of a writer. I had my personal blog, had about maybe 5 articles on there. And the guy's like, hey, listen, I've read what you had to say. We heard you, my guys heard you speak. So why don't you write your Bitcoin analysis stuff for us? So I was kind of a very little reporter that I didn't really know what I'm doing, but was more analyzing Bitcoin from an economic perspective, which is more of my background.
That sounds great. And how did it go at Cointelegraph? Were you agreed on a salary? Were you paid that salary?
When I first started, Ian was already there. So Cointelegraph was, I believe things started around March of 2014, and I joined in July. So I was only a few months after it started. So I'm positive that Ian was already one of the writers there.
Now, you said you were introduced to an editor-in-chief. Who's the editor-in-chief that you were introduced to?
So I never met the editor-in-chief. His name was Andrew. I never met the editor-in-chief. I only spoke to him on the phone. I don't even know what country he lived in. But I met a few of the other people. And I know the big question is who owns it, and we'll probably get to that. But as far as the pay goes, so initially, I wasn't even sure I was going to get paid. The thing is, I was different than any other writer on there because I didn't need the money. I was working a Wall Street job. I was getting paid really good money. There was nothing that could have paid me that would have been, that would have meant much. Right now, I'm kind of unemployed because I quit my job. So right now, it's different. But at the time, I was making really good money, so I didn't really care about the money. I just wanted to write my articles for people to read them, and I was happy to write there because I can reach a much bigger audience because they look like a real website, unlike what I built for myself, by myself.
And, so from your perspective, things went pretty well. You published your articles. Did they tell you what to write about? Were you free to write about whatever you liked?
Yeah, I was free to write whatever I like. There was editors there. They didn't change much at all. And I wanted them. I'm not that great of a writer. So I'm like, yeah, change the grammar, rephrase it, as long as you're making me look smarter, that's great. So I was happy with anything they did on that front. And that's pretty much all they did. When I first started there, it was you got paid per word or per character. And my articles were analysis. So They were kind of lengthy, and I put a lot of time into it. It would take me like all day to write this thing. And then after like 2 or 3 months in, they changed their structure to be social media based. And at the time, like I don't have a Reddit account. I'm not a huge fan of Reddit. And I have a LinkedIn, and I don't use Facebook because I'm a big privacy advocate. I have Facebook, I don't really use it. I had just gotten Twitter like last June. I'm like, the reason I'm writing for you is so that I'm not promoting my own stuff, right? That was the point. So once it went to the social media drives your salary, the value of my articles literally got cut in half. So all of a sudden, I'm getting paid half of what I was being paid before, and it was for the amount of work I put into it. It was coming out to like $1 an hour it was something crazy cheap. But again, I didn't care. I wasn't writing for money. I was writing to write. So that really didn't bother me at all. I know it bothered some writers, and there were definitely some issues with the algorithm. I actually remember I contacted them after I wrote 4 or 5 articles, or 4 or 5 weeks even. I contacted them. I'm like, hey guys, can you take a look at my account? My articles, I'm being paid like $3 per article. So they took a look and they're like, oh, you weren't properly being aggregated into the thing. Like again, right? It took me like a month to even complain to them. And I'm like, I'm not sure that's right. I think I should make more than $3 per article. So they took a look and they adjusted it, and I got paid. So I've never had any money issues with them. But I'm also on really good terms with the people at the top, at least the people I think are at the top. So I might be an exception that I wasn't going to have any problems. I mean, everybody's different, right?
Now, you mentioned people who you think are at the top. Did you have any run-ins with the person who they said was the CEO? Were you told that she was also the CEO? How did that go for you?
I'm not going to get into that many details, but that person came on board, I believe, around October. And but again, right, I was just doing my own thing. So I didn't really care. The way I see Coin Telegraph is like a perfect decentralized news site. You have a bunch of writers. There's very little oversight. As far as I saw, there was very little control over what you can and can't write. Look, there was definitely issues, right? Somebody would write an article without doing proper due diligence. And that was the one time I was asked to actually do something. I had to clean up a mess. So somebody wrote an article about a company, and it went over pretty bad. Like people complained, and the company complained, and it was bad. So I was actually asked to fix it. So I got in contact with the company, had a nice, 30, 40-minute chat, interview, and then wrote a follow-up to the article, something like that. But that was a good thing that happened.
So you were never told you had to write about a specific altcoin or write against a specific altcoin or for a specific altcoin, anything like that?
No, it never happened. Not for me anyway. But again, I wasn't writing that much. I was putting out 2 articles a week, maybe 3. Like I said, I'm not a big investigative journalist. Ian was doing some of that, and there were a few others. I'm more of an economic opinion, or do an interview with a company and try to, present the company. But again, those companies weren't pushed on me. Most of the time, it was people that I know in the industry asking me to write about them. And I don't even know what the hell the right ethics are here. So I went by, yeah, you know what? I like your company. I like what you guys are doing. So some of them probably weren't even newsworthy, but I knew the people and I liked what their initiatives. So, I took the interview. I figured, I do an interview, I write it up, I throw it out there. If the editor-in-chief doesn't like it, they don't have to publish it.
Now, you mentioned Bitcoin technical analysis, and you've pretty much got that market locked up, right? That's mainly what you're writing about. So let's give you a chance here. We had a bit of an action this weekend. We dropped from 280 to 265 just on this Sunday, or I think it might have been Saturday, but yeah, still about a day's drop. So what do you think about the market right now? Here you go, pop quiz.
So I'm actually bullish on the market right now. I like it to go up. I know we had a couple of issues this week with a lot of exchanges leaving New York. The big news was Bitfinex and then Kraken, but Kraken isn't that big. But Bitfinex getting out of New York, that's big. A lot of traders, they like to preemptively take on positions. What I said during the Greece thing, I mean, I was pushing Greece is going to cause Bitcoin prices to go up since the start of the year. If you Google my name and you look at a podcast I did with Jeff Berwick, Anarchast, back in January, you hear me talk about what's going to happen this summer. But for some reason, I was saying Italy and not Greece. They're all the same. Italy's next, probably Italy, Spain. So I basically laid out the entire situation of what's going to happen in Greece with the bank closures, and Bitcoin, that would be the cue for Bitcoin to go up, either by speculation or actual demand from Europe. I was completely spot on that trend, but throughout that interview, I'm just using Italy as the general example for Southern Europe and not for specifically Greece. But when I gave my presentation at the conference a month later in February, there I was talking specifically about Greece because that was in my presentation. So now Greece took another loan, so everything died down. That's one of the reasons why the prices started to cool off from the 315. The Bitcoin exchanges is probably skewing it a little bit to the downside right now, but I'm still bullish. I think the trend changed this summer. I think the rest of the year should be good. The one thing that worries me a little more is the constant debate over the block size. They got to resolve that. That is just, that's starting to get frustrating.
It does look bad, like they can't come to a decision. Echoing here. Tone, are we echoing all of a sudden?
Hold on a second. I'm shutting down. I have trading software running, so that could have been eating up some of my memory. How's it now?
Let's try it now. No, it's still echoing pretty bad.
Really? On your side?
No, I can hear it coming back from your speakers.
All right, let me throw a headset on. Hold on. Did it just start, or was it always like that?
I think it just started.
That's kind of weird.
Sometimes it can cancel it out. It's able to see it. But
all right, how's this?
I think it's better.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better. I can't hear myself. So before we go on, we're going to start going to the hard questions. There was an interesting post on Reddit recently, which I think in a lot of ways started this. And this doesn't seem like a real post. It's by someone fake for my own good. I'm not sure what that's about, but they say that Coin Telegraph is shutting down, cutting all non-writer salary to zero. And it was posted by a person named D-May. So first of all, have you heard anything about this? Is Coin Telegraph shutting down? Are they cutting all non-writer salary to zero?
I heard rumors just like you have. The thing is, I do like to protect people's privacy. And we can talk about the hypothetical person that is the mastermind behind Coin Telegraph. I've seen some of the Reddit posts. People are calling, this is several references to a man named D-May. I'm not going to confirm or deny that because I want to protect people's privacy. And I do speak to the person that supposedly, or at least as far as I'm aware, is the mastermind and the organizer of Coin Telegraph. I met this person when I was in Asia. Again, this is how I even found out about Coin Telegraph. And but I would like to protect people's privacy. So I'm not going to get into too much detail. Now, I have heard that non-writers are at the moment working for non-salary, either equity or future revenue, and they are looking for funding. They're trying to, they're looking for some investors, and they're looking for funding.
All right. So, yeah, it was David Bailey and Jackson Palmer both said that this was not a conspiracy, and they seem to imply that it's not a secret. I'm not going to go down that lane further if you want to just say that to respect his privacy, but normally it is kind of a normal thing for someone that owns a media organization to be public about it. Rupert Murdoch is public. Mort Zuckerman is public. They seem to be echoing again.
I lost your audio for a second. Can you just repeat that?
Sure. I was just going to say that usually an organizer of a Bitcoin or of any media group is public. Like Rupert Murdoch is a public figure. Mort Zuckerman owns the U.S. News and World Report, is a public figure. So it is generally normal for them to be public. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's okay for someone to publish a news organization in private?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep. We were going so good at first. Then we've hit some walls.
Audio.
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Hello?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. All right. No, do you still hear an echo?
No, sounds fine now.
Okay, let's stick to this. I took the headset off. Okay, so what I heard was you mentioned that most of the CEOs of media companies are public, but this one isn't. And did you read the David Bailey post or no?
I mean, I can if you want. I mean, I don't want to like expose someone more or anything, but David Bailey did say basically that it's not a conspiracy. What David Bailey said is that, it's owned by a Russian man named Dime. He met him at a Bitcoin supper club and that he's a nice guy. And maybe there's a strange organizational structure and advertising base, but that can be difficult. And he's basically saying that it's not a conspiracy. Jackson Palmer said much the same thing, saying it was majority owned by a person that has since removed their LinkedIn profile.
Well, so, I'm gonna completely agree with them that it's not a conspiracy at all. I don't really know what happened in the very early days, right? Because I joined 3 months in. What was it? Digibyte? What was the coin that was mentioned?
It was Bytecoin, an early crypto note coin. Bytecoin.
I actually don't remember Bytecoin at all. Like I've never heard of it until I started listening to these interviews, right? So if there was something on that site about Bytecoin, either I wasn't paying attention to it or I don't remember it. I do remember seeing ads for Paycoin, but a lot of people got caught on that. And more recently, I remember seeing a lot of ads for Newcoin everywhere. I don't even know what happened to that one. So I don't think it's a conspiracy, but let's. But I'm the analyst, right? So let's dig into David Bailey wrote. So in that first sentence, it says he believes it's owned by a Russian named Dime, right? So if you just break that down, yep, it's right there, owned by a Russian named Dime, right? So if you take David Bailey, and if you believe him, just dig into that, right? If the owner of the site is Russian, do you see any motivation why he would want to stay under the radar and anonymous, especially if he happens to live there, if that is correct, that that's the person? You can see why he might be a little nervous being the public figure and walking around everywhere.
That does make sense. Russia has been famously critical of Bitcoin, and as we all know, it is ruled by Vladimir Putin. Not going to say anything about that.
Just the other day, I don't know if you saw the article, like one of like some kind of one of the Russian ministers threatened to shut down a website just because they had one article about Bitcoin that is 2 years old. Have you seen this?
I saw it. It was an old article. The people running the website really couldn't believe it because it had been out for so long.
Right, it's been out for 2 years. They're not even a Bitcoin website, right? So if David Bailey is right and the site does have Russian roots, you can see all the reasons in the world why that person wouldn't want to be a public figure.
It is a fair point when you think about it internationally. We can't just think about the U.S., where the U.S. we would want our media figures to be public, presumably because we have protections like freedom of speech, freedom of press. And you're right, those aren't available in some other countries.
And as far as some of the advertising goes, again, look, everyone made a mistake on Paycoin. They were like a sponsor for a conference. I was actually at that conference. That was very interesting. But again, if some coin was helping them, get this thing up and running, again, I have no idea. But like, how do you know? I know I was watching your show the other day, and in between there was an advertisement for Purse.io, right? You use Purse.io.
Definitely, and I work at Purse.io.
Oh, so and you work at Purse.io.
I'm very public about that. I mean, that's my job.
Oh, okay. I actually didn't know you were at Purse.io. But again, right, but for some people, they can also question, well, how are they able to give a 20% discount? But that's the situation, right? Is the website really responsible for doing all the due diligence on someone that wants to do some advertising? But yes, it depends whether you're advertising or whether you're writing articles about them. There is a big difference there. But like I said, if there are articles of that nature, I would like to see them. If someone has links, I mean, I'm not going to go searching for them because it's not that important to me. But if it's important for someone to change my mind and for me to see it, tweet them at me, tweet them at you, and I'll be more than happy to give them a read. But I'm more, from what I saw at Coin Telegraph throughout the months I was working there and writing there, and what Evander Smart said, that seems to make sense to me. I mean, I never had any problems.
Well, I certainly want it to be that way, and I don't want there to be paid articles that are masquerading as normal articles. But I think it's very difficult because a lot of Bitcoin companies do need PR, and given the chance to pay for PR, I think it's very possible that they might have paid. And maybe your articles weren't paid, maybe Evander's articles aren't paid, maybe Ian only had that one run-in with the Bitcoin Monero issue. But I just think we all need to be very public about when we're paid. And I'm paid by Purse, so I do the Friday show in an agreement with them where I get an hour off work and they get an advertisement. So I think it's a good deal, and I'm very public about it. But I think everyone else should be as well. And what would you think about that? Do you think that there were a lot of pay-for-play articles, or?
I wouldn't know. I have no idea. I know none of them came across my way. I haven't heard anybody really be public about it. I mean, I did hear the interview with Ian. And I do know that on several occasions, we did have a group chat where all the writers were and the editors. And there were several comments that the editors would write saying, hey, guys, please do not accept money on the side to write about certain things. So they were, it was pretty decentralized, but they were self-conscious. So they publicly made it known to the writers that we're looking to be a legit website, and we don't want our writers taking money on the side. So, but that's pretty much all I know. To me, it felt like more of a blog with writers everywhere, and some of the writers were using alias names, especially the ones in the beginning. But again, when you're starting in Bitcoin in 2012, 2013, look, I was cautious as well. I mean, I still make an effort not to connect a single Satoshi to my, official, to my bank accounts, to anything, right? But that's me. Maybe I'm too paranoid. And that's unfortunately that's one of the drawbacks of why I haven't used Purse.io yet, because then it connects to my address and it connects to my name because I got to get it shipped, and that is not something I'm doing yet because I see more of a safe haven when governments go start doing stuff they shouldn't be doing to the public. So I see Bitcoin as a savior for that, more than I see it as a medium to buy, your next, I don't know, what your next Cliff Bars.
Well, I'm still enjoying my box of Cliff Bars, but I do think that helps a lot to know that they had editorial meetings and that they did say to their writers, please don't take money, please don't write about things that you're paid for. To hear that they're attempting to be above board does go a long way, and I do appreciate that. You said I could ask you all the hard questions, so I'm going to come back with one more really hard question. Somebody in email sent me this diagram, and it basically describes how Cointelegraph would help promote an altcoin. They would send the altcoin to one of their casino partners, then they would promote that the altcoin's available at the casino, have the people play. Gets a little complicated about where the money goes back and forth. Did you ever have any experience with Cointelegraph, a casino partner, or writing about an altcoin, anything like this?
No. The first time I'm seeing this graphic is on your channel.
All right. Well, just wanted to put it out there. I don't think that it's inherently that bad. It's probably just an advertising arrangement, and we've only got a small part of it, so it doesn't make as much sense to us if we had the whole thing. But I just want to put it out there, and I think Cointelegraph sounds pretty good from what you said. It sounds like they maybe had that one run-in with Ian trying to promote Digicoin, or I've even messed it up now, Bytecoin, and that kind of thing. But we're going to go ahead and move on. Unfortunately, Tony wasn't able to make the Bitcoin group on Friday, so we're just going to go through some of the issues and get Tone's opinion while we have him here. One of our first issues was Overstock CEO unveils partnership with the world's largest bank to turn Wall Street upside down. And Patrick Byrne announced this week his T0, his new stock market program, where he's going to offer public and private equities and the ability to short. So, Tony, what do you think of T0 so far?
I think it's great. Everything I've read about it seems like he's doing the right thing. I know it doesn't matter what market you are. The moment you say short, everyone all of a sudden starts screaming that the world's going to end. I mean, look at China. They banned shorting. They even banned selling, right? You can't even sell stock. I think they said if you own more than 5% or something of any stock, you can't sell it for like 6 weeks. It's anytime I hear some government or some regulator say we're going to ban shorting, it just drives me up the wall, because what stops a waterfall crash is people that are short saying, I made some good money, I'm going to buy it back. You have to cover the short. All crashes end with short covering. And once some start covering their short, others are forced to cover the short. When you remove the ability to short, you basically eliminate the floor. Because if you can't short and nobody wants to buy, there is no bid, and it just keeps going down. Who's going to want to buy? When something is crashing, the only people that buy are those that made money on it by shorting it. If you can't short to make money on it, no one buys. And you just keep going down. So the ability to short is really important. And the ability to do it in a way where you can't just stop it, I believe, is also a very good thing. And cutting out the middleman of settlement is also important. So everything Patrick's doing, I think, is great. I don't know the exact details. I probably should read up on it a little bit more. But again, it's years away from anything really viable. It's going to be a slow-moving train, even though faster than a lot of other things. But in the Bitcoin space, a year or two is a really long time. So I'm not expecting anything significant definitely not this year, but next year I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out.
Well, that was a great explanation of short selling. I'd always thought, echoing again pretty badly. Let me try muting you for just a sec. That was a great explanation of short selling. I'd always thought negatively of short selling as though you were betting against the stock, and I prefer to bet for the stock. Like, I like Apple. I hope Apple goes up. They make more computers, good for everybody. But to see shorting as a useful function of stopping a market crash, and to see what China's going through, where they're trying a bunch of strange controls, like you said, banning shorting, banning the people with more than 5% selling. They have that thing, if the stock goes down a certain amount each day, they freeze the stock, which resulted in going down again the next day, going down the next day. It can't get the negative part out of there. So I'm seeing a lot of those as failures. And let's go and go on to the next issue. We had one this week where Japan said that Bitcoin can't be owned. And meanwhile, they have Mark Karpelès in jail for failing to protect his clients' Bitcoins. So what do you think about this, Tone? Can Bitcoin be owned? Is Mark Karpelès going to stay in jail? And you have to go ahead and unmute yourself. There's a button on the top. You have to push it. It might have disappeared, but I have the ability to mute you, but not to unmute. So go ahead.
Okay, I got it. So I do think Mark Karpelès is going to stay in jail, but because he did defraud people. I don't know. I think we need more info on that story. The first thing I would check is, was that translation accurate? Because it seems like the court doesn't understand Bitcoin at all, right? They ruled it that it's something that must be used with a third party, and that's just completely inaccurate. So I think they will get the definition right, and Bitcoin can be owned. So they'll get it right. Now, that's not what worries me, right? So all of a sudden, people think, well, if Bitcoin can't be owned, then Mark Karpelès goes free. No. What happens is people that are now screaming that I want my money back, I don't know who they expect to give it back to them, right? So this ruling was more, you can scream all you want to get your money back from Mt. Gox. It's not there. All we can do is throw Karpelès in jail, or if he ever makes money in the future, you can get your claim on that. But I think this is more from the standpoint of people trying to somehow sue for something that's no longer there. I don't see this as a get out of jail card for Karpelès. Now, what worries me more, if that ruling does stick, well, you can't own your Bitcoins, then there's no ownership. What scares me is a government agency just walking into an exchange, taking all the users' Bitcoins, and then going, well, hey, haven't you seen what the court said? You don't own it. It doesn't exist, right? So my problem with that ruling is, some government agents are just now have it's like civil forfeiture, right? They don't need to justify the taking of your Bitcoins because you don't own them. I don't see it as a way to get Karpelès off.
I think it's a good, let's see, I'm going to mute you again, but I think it's a good point that when you give your money to Mt. Gox, it's out of your control, and there really is no one to sue for it. There's no one there's no federal insurance on Bitcoin. There's no federal insurance on Mt. Gox. It's in another country. And this comes back to what Bitcoin truly is. When we say you get to be your own bank, we really mean it. And if your bank fails because you were trusting your money to a third party, that's it. It's over. Your bank failed. And there's no protections, and that's part of what makes Bitcoin great. Is that it's a new level of responsibility. If you lose your passwords, if you lose your keys, if you lose your phone, you don't have backups, that's it. It's a computer program. And I just think people have got to get used to that, and they're not ready for it. And a lot of people didn't understand what they had when they put their Bitcoins in Mt. Gox, and they didn't understand why they were keeping them there. A lot of people I've heard of, waitresses who put a couple $1,000s in, it became a couple $100,000, and they just left it there. And when your investment changes, when it goes up 10 times or 100 times, you have to split it up. You have to diversify, even if it's just as simple as putting it in multiple bank accounts. at least that way, if that bank fails, you don't lose it all. And I think a lot of these people made hundreds of thousands of dollars and didn't get that advice, sadly, and they weren't able to diversify or to do anything. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And to go a step further, when you said about insurance, I can make an argument that FDIC insurance that insures us here in America for 100,000 or 250. I know they raised it during the crash. I can make an argument that having FDIC insurance is really bad for everyone, because when you know you're insured for up to $100,000, you will give any bank your $100,000, because then the government's responsible for it. Meanwhile, they're only like 2% liquid, right? They can only reimburse 2% of everybody's money. So it takes the responsibility completely off the user. They don't care what bank they put it in. They can put it into the riskiest bank just to collect an extra 0.05% in interest. And then a bank that doesn't deserve these deposits are, going buck wild in the trading space with your money. So, I mean, that's another thing, right? Just because there is insurance, that doesn't mean that it's a good thing.
And you bring up the trading space, and that reminds me how much worse it's gotten since the repeal and the failure of Glass-Steagall. Not the failure of Glass-Steagall, but just the repeal and the failure to renew it. That banks are now merged with investment banks. And they're not just holding your savings or holding your mortgage. They're actually out there on the free market gambling and wagering with your savings. So yes, things have definitely got a lot worse with the banks.
Oh man, you are 100% right. Now, again, I am pretty anti most, if not all, regulation. But at the same time, Glass-Steagall was great. If you're anti, I don't want to contradict myself saying I hate regulation, but I like to separate retail bank from trading bank. But here's how I end the contradiction. Fine, you want to remove Glass-Steagall? Great, then don't bail them out.
Absolutely. It would have been a very different world if they had not bailed out some of these large banks.
Right. If you can't, they should have gone bust. Yeah, it would have been hard, but we would have recovered, right? And the system would have been better off for it. It's like I always say, I always give so much credit to Mt. Gox. I thank them for bringing Bitcoin to more people, because if it wasn't for Mt. Gox, it may still be 2 or 3 cents, because they provided a market that found a price and people were able to buy it. Now, I also think it's awesome that they were not bailed out, because can you imagine if they were regulated and then they came in, well, we can't have Mt. Gox fail, Bitcoin will die, and then you keep this inefficient company that trading magic cards, and I don't know what they were. I heard their code was written absolutely horribly. It was not designed to be an exchange. Now, can you imagine if they got bailed out and that would still be the biggest exchange today? That would be terrible.
And especially the way that Mark Karpeles allegedly ran Mt. Gox, that he had a lot of money to hire extra programmers. And one of the tricks is to hire programmers and people that are smarter than you. And it doesn't seem like Karpeles ever did that. It doesn't seem like the team was expanded. It seemed like a lot of control was kept with him. And I think that's a lot what led to their failure. Well, let's move on to the last issue for today. Bitcoin companies are compounding the hoarding problem. And this issue basically brought up that a lot of companies are based on keeping Bitcoin from flowing. And a lot of other companies and a lot of other people think that Bitcoin should flow, that we should spend more Bitcoin, and that perhaps Bitcoin spending could lead to Bitcoin adoption. What do you think, Tom? Let's see, you got to unmute yourself.
So I think that anyone that blames hoarding, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. It's whenever I hear people say hoarding, I usually correct them and say saving. I think concentration of capital is great. I do believe that saving those Bitcoins, everyone is like, oh, people have too many Bitcoins, 30, let's say 50 people have like 33% of all Bitcoins? And my answer is fine. Then create something that they want and separate them from their Bitcoins. Right? Create something they want to spend them on. Give them something to spend them on. Or if the price goes up enough, they're not going to sit. You're not going to sit on $500 million. You're going to do something with it. And this is the problem, right? Governments always go after other people's money, especially rich people's money. You're going to tell me that a government is going to put a rich person's money to use better than the rich person himself? There's two ways people get rich. One, you create a product or a service that people voluntarily pay for. Or two, you're an idiot that inherited a lot of money. Now, what happens when an idiot inherits a lot of money? They usually blow through it. And if you were smart enough and you earned it all voluntarily, then you're probably going to use it way more wisely than anyone that's looking to confiscate it from you. So I don't see any problem with any kind of anything that people refer to as hoarding. I think saving is a good thing. Anyone that's able to do that will put that capital to way better use. And if they want to gamble it away, they can gamble it away, and then it goes into the economy, right? But trying to manipulate the economy to get people to spend the way you want them to spend by manipulating the economy is ridiculous.
I'd agree. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs in Bitcoin like Roger Ver and Jared Kenna who bought Bitcoin early and then invested in other businesses and other enterprises. And I'd say Bitcoin is far richer for it. So it is good to let the rich keep their money. And I don't think it's that bad that we have a concentration of Bitcoin wealth. I think basically the new computer geek overlords will be better than the old banking overlords. And maybe we're wrong. Maybe they'll both become overlords. But let's roll the dice on these geeks and see how it goes. We've got a question from the audience. Caleb Smith writes, wouldn't a variable block reward based on coin days destroyed disincentivize hoarding or holding? It's just a thought that's been bugging him. So what do you think, Tone?
Wait, can you just repeat that?
I think he's saying that a variable block record, variable block reward based upon coin days destroyed. So presumably if there were a lot of coin days destroyed, the reward would be bigger. If there were less coin days destroyed, the reward would be smaller? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure what coin days destroyed refers to.
There's a way of looking at Bitcoin where you say, how long have these coins been sitting there? And I think that this analysis says it's better if the coins sit there longer. So if the very old coins, Satoshi coins, things like that, start moving, that actually destroys coin days because I think they're in favor of the coins sitting there longer. I think that's the idea.
I think that's too much manipulation. That I don't like, because then again, you're trying to force people into you don't want to have any regulation that changes people's spending habits. People should spend how they want to spend. So any rule that can alter your habits, and taxes is part of it, right? You alter your habits based on taxes as well. That's why a lot of people do certain things at the end of the year. So I don't like any rules, but whether it's government changing them all the time or even if it's programmed. If it can alter your spending habits, I don't like it. Now, the one thing I may concede, so this thing, because I'm against like inflating the supply. Some people said, well, if you build inflation into the Bitcoin system, then you just, 2% inflation like the Fed. So I'm against that. So the only thing I may concede on is, because you do know coins get lost, right? Private keys get lost. People send them somewhere. They don't know how to get to them. I read a statistic that like 8 or 10% of all the Bitcoins are permanently now lost. So, and Bitcoins will be lost over time. You give away $1 here, $1 there. It adds up, especially if the price goes up. So the only inflation or inflation-ish I would concede on is if someone writes an algorithm estimating how many Bitcoins are lost forever. And then after the official 21 million is reached, you can still create more Bitcoins based on an algorithm to replace the ones that you believe will never be moved. And if they are going to be moved, and if they do get moved, the ones that you thought were dead but they're moving, then you readjust it back saying, okay, I have another element, so we're not going to, so we're going to hold off on the replenishing until we recalculate. So this way, you're always trying to stay as close to 21 million as possible by replenishing the supply that you believe are lost forever. So I would concede on that.
All right, we've got a follow-up from Caleb. He says, actually, I was saying it backwards. He says that if the coins are stagnant, it reflects on the network health in a negative way. And he's saying, of course, both extremes are bad, but just trying to create a balance. And he says that it would be similar to the way that the difficulty adjusts. What do you think about that?
That sounds a little bit better. I mean, look, we all worry, what if Satoshi hits the sell button on 500,000 Bitcoins and immediately crash the price? You know what? I'll take my chances. I'll take my chances. People don't just, accumulate this kind of wealth to play God with the market. I mean, the only people that do that end up working in government, right? So I don't really worry. I don't really worry about that. I don't mind Bitcoin sitting there for a while. Look, come up with something Satoshi wants, and I'm sure he'll spend his Bitcoins.
Very cool. This has been a good interview. I think we've talked a good amount about Coin Telegraph. Is there anything you'd like to add in closing, Tone? Anything going on?
Yeah, let me see, hon. I'm getting a couple of direct messages based on this chat. So one of them was people aren't happy that I'm maintaining the privacy of the owner of Coin Telegraph, and that and like you said, it's a media company. It creates transparency, and therefore it should be transparent. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think it has to be. I think the content should speak for itself. And if people do have issues with specific content, then it's their right to, expose the content and do investigative work on the content, exposing the content, and hopefully that would make the site better in the future. And I think that would be a good thing. And if someone finds old articles in the beginning, and again, like you said in the other interview, maybe it started out as one thing and then holy crap, it's taken off. We can be a viable media site to compete with CoinDesk. Let's go with it. And again, if that was the case, I think it's great. Look, everyone's always complaining there's too many bad actors. Well, you know what? Anytime if there was a bad actor and he turns good, isn't that a good thing?
I think it's tough to tell that they've totally gone good. But I agree with you. We do need a counterbalance to CoinDesk. It's good to have competition in this market, and I think that Cointelegraph offers a different kind of article than at CoinDesk. CoinDesk seems more like a wire service. Cointelegraph has more opinion, more longer form articles, and I appreciate it. But people keep asking these questions, and I keep bringing them up as well. So.
Oh, and one last thing I should say. So Cointelegraph, their internal people did provide leads. So there was a Trello, I think, is the system, and they did post leads, right? If any of the writers wants to write about this topic, here's a topic we would like to cover, right? So they can throw an altcoin on there, they can throw whatever on there, they can even post links of some of the things that you may want to mention, but as far as I know, it was always up to the writers to pick up the story, and they can, run with it whichever way you want. If they post write about this coin, they're not going to tell you write only good things, right? If they say write about this coin, you can research the coin, then write how it's a total scam. So they did provide leads, but I've never seen a situation where an agenda was pushed. But again, I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for anybody else. And but I did move on to Brave New Coin, and that's where I've been writing since pretty much March. because they're more than just a media company. Media is just a small side of it, and I can use my Wall Street skills for my job there. It was more suited to what I can do in the space. I needed to do more than just write.
That sounds good. And you do bring up a good point that at the end of the day, it's all up to us to take our own responsibility. Don't believe everything you read. Do your own research, look things up, question things, question articles from CoinDesk, Coin Telegraph, the New York Times, anywhere. It's good to be questioning. It's good to ask these questions. And be sure to check out Tone's work at Brave New Coin. Very cool stuff. And I think that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for being on. Bye-bye.